One thing that I feel people tend to forget about is the boost block mechanic, which is exclusive to New Super Mario Bros. U. Using the gamepad, you can create blocks that can be used to save your friends from falling down pits and all that fun jazz. But what if you were to beat the entire game without touching the ground? For some quick ground rules before beginning, I'll be using the gamepad to control the blocks, and Nico BBQ will be controlling Mario. That's right, this is a collab Is It Possible video.
So the only times we can actually touch the floor is at the very beginning, after the flagpole, and going through pipes or doors, since that's just to go from place to place. But with that said, let's get started with the first level in the first world.
Starting with 1-1, playing like this took quite a while to get used to.
We thought beforehand that this would be a breeze to play, but trying to coordinate where to place blocks and where Mario was going to be was a lot harder than expected.
We died way too many times just trying to get Mario a mushroom. After several tries, we just gave up on the power-up and just beat the level by staying near the top. After that, we moved to 1-2, and our first obstacle was this yellow pipe. The issue was of course getting around it.
Bouncing off the Goombas to get around was one idea, but they wouldn't line up properly for it to work. We even built up a boost star to kill the piranha plant in the pipe, but still no luck. After some tries, we decided to go back to 1-1 and grab a super acorn to get across.
Using the acorn suit's gliding ability, we could just barely make this jump around the pipe, but believe me when I say that this is just the beginning. After that was a tilted green and yellow pipe, and that also required a stupidly precise glide jump with a block to follow it. This whole level was really narrow, so it was extremely challenging to get through most parts of it. After a few minutes, we ran into a large section of bricks and weren't really sure what to do.
After testing which blocks had coins in them and trying to route, we realized taking the bottom road and flying around the bricks was a lot easier than going up top. We were getting close to the end of the level finally, and got to a point with a bunch of colored rocks and needed it to move down to proceed.
Unfortunately, there was no way to get past this without touching the ground of the rock, even while using the boost star. We tried using a pipe to possibly skip this area, but it dropped us right in front of the same rock, and we tried grabbing the tip of the side of the rock to see if that would activate it, but no luck was found.
Our last idea was to take the secret alternate route, but that would also require us to touch the ground at least once. This is our first and only required touch to complete the level. But at least we got this really insane glide jump over the blue rocks.
We were really hoping for a break going into one mid-castle, but instead we ran into these giant cogs. With really precise spin jumps, we were able to get around some of them with some practice, but that was only one at a time.
What was next was a series of 3 cogs that intertwined with each other, and at this point there was no way we were getting through this without multiple ground touches.
After dozens of tries, the best option ended up being to go back to 1-2 and take that alternate path to 1 blooper. We did have to sacrifice an additional jump, but we felt it would be less jumps doing it this way. After all that nonsense, 1 blooper was thankfully a much simpler level to tackle, as Nico simply swam through and I poked bloopers and stopped pipes from blowing air. Completing this level let us skip all the way to World 5.
And with 5-1, we already knew this would be doable, because there's a challenge with this level in the challenge mode where you're supposed to avoid touching the ground by bouncing off enemies.
And 5-2 was also pretty easy with nothing much to say. 5 Mid-Castle is a snake block level, so we were thinking that this would be free. Nico had to make sure to run across and stay at the bottom so the snake block wouldn't get in our way before making any progress. We got through the first half, albeit a couple of close calls here and there, and we also figured out spikes destroyed the boost blocks and almost learned that the hard way.
The second half went a lot smoother, and Boom Boom was a cakewalk, considering Mario could claw to the wall and never need to touch the floor. After that was 5-Ghost House, and despite all of the hallways and doors, it was surprisingly possible.
Or so we thought. Entering this first door required us to touch the moving floor in order for it to move down. Since this was only 1 ground touch, we'll finish up the level, but possibly come back later and take the alternate route and see if we can save ground touches. Moving along was 5-5. We chose this route because it's mostly a water level and barely had to worry about the ground. I helped with the light, but that's about it. We took the secret level to move forward. And next was 5-6, which was also really easy.
And finally, we made it to 5-Castle, which was pretty simple until the boss. For Iggy, we had to really carefully place blocks in the middle as it was really easy to touch the ground by accident.
Iggy could also knock away our blocks when spinning into them, plus we had to worry about his fireballs disintegrating the blocks. Despite all the dilemmas though, it was possible, despite it taking quite some time. The final hit was insane considering we got hit but also somehow hit Iggy at the same time.
And that wraps up World 5, so it's time to tackle World 6. 6-1 was super easy, and 6-2 wasn't too bad either. Now, 6-Mid-Castle was very challenging because all the paths were really narrow and there were growls all over the place.
We quickly decided to grab an acorn suit and were able to just barely get through this initial pathway with a crazy wall jump and a well-placed block. And after that, we had to avoid these growls and pipes, and somehow managed to pull it off.
But this next part is a problem, as you can see. This pathway is just as tall as Mario. Even with a well-timed jump, Mario still couldn't get through without touching the ground. So once again, the game is trying to force me and Bandy to touch the stupid ground. Why you do that, game?
Nico and I decided that we should just go back and try out 5 Ghost House and see how that alternate exit fares. It got a little nerve-wracking with all these boos, but believe it or not, with some clear maneuvering, we were okay.
And thankfully, this path was more than possible without the ground. However, this narrow section required well-placed blocks to get through it.
Because of that, we can get rid of one of the required touches and skip right to 5 Beetle. For this level, we had to be careful of the bonsai bills, but otherwise it was free. Going into World 7, it was definitely hard having to avoid all the plants and making sure to avoid the fast-moving bricks. We even had this really clutch moment where we almost fell to our death, but I somehow saved Nico with a block at the very bottom. Despite that, it was a doable level.
7-2 was going fine until we got to this tilted platform that required Mario to stand on it. Thankfully, we could just try 7-3 instead. And this was a pretty fun level.
There was this one jump where we had to do these 2 well-timed wall jumps to make it, but with some attempts we were able to pull this off. 7 Mid-Castle was insanely hard. We had to do a ridiculous amount of hard tricks, and Nico somehow managed to wall jump off the same side twice in a row. Don't ask us how that happened. Just the fact that we had to climb up vertically so much forced us to play extremely well to get through this.
Magikoopa wasn't that bad. We just had to stay near the top with the blocks and it worked out. Next up was 7-Ghost House, and this level was a pain in the butt. We had to keep carefully landing on doors without running, and so many rooms were just auto-scrollers.
Unfortunately, we had to touch the ground one time because it was required to move forward with the level, but besides that, we could beat it. 7-5 had a few hard parts here and there, but overall it was possible, and the same goes for 7-6. For 7 Castle, Nico and I thought this was going to be impossible because of these fast-moving blocks, but we attempted it anyway, and this happened.
After that, we were thinking, okay, that was lucky, we're not going to get that lucky again. And then there was this. Whew, I guess this teamwork really has paid off.
Those were the hardest parts of the level, and after the boss, we were done with World 7 and were able to move on to the airship. This level was interesting because I discovered you can block the giant hand with a boost block, but besides that, it was simple enough.
And just like that, we've made it to World 8. Here's to hoping we don't have to touch the ground for the rest of the game.
8-1's beginning required a very precise jump with the acorn suit, but since I could break up the lava balls, we were able to get across the whole level pretty seamlessly.
8-2 wasn't that bad. However, we had to react quickly to all of the enemies falling through the sky.
I also told Nico to not hit this P block, but he hit it anyway just to spite me.
It was totally worth it, dude.
But moving on to 8-3, it was way easier than we expected, and 8-4 wasn't too bad until this big pile of bricks. We tried wall jumping up it at first, but that didn't work out, so I just destroyed some for him, and then it was a lot easier for him to get up. And after that, we were at the final level. It was time to take out the big old Bowser.
So Bowser Jr. was incredibly annoying to avoid, since there wasn't really anywhere to run when trying to hit him, so we decided to grab an acorn suit. And with this, we were able to get through the level really quickly, especially when Bowser Jr. pushed us along.
But then there was the final boss. No, not that one, the real final boss. We needed to basically get ourselves up top to hit Bowser Jr., then hit Bowser, and after that was the tricky part. We had to immediately glide to the other side to avoid Bowser's shell, then at just the right time, I had to give Nico a block so he could land, avoid Bowser, and glide to the other side all in one perfect run.
This was way harder than you think, but we have to do it 3 times to win. If we got hit at any point during the fight, then we'd have to restart entirely.
But despite all odds, we were more than prepared after playing for so long, and we actually freaking did it. We hit Bowser 3 times and he was toast.
We actually went into this thinking this challenge would be a breeze, but we didn't take into consideration the narrow pathways and all of the enemies we had to avoid.
So is it possible to beat New Super Mario Bros. U without touching the ground? You know the answer. Sadly, it was not possible. Our grand total of ground touches though was 3, which isn't too bad honestly. This was a ton of fun to work on with Nico, and if you enjoyed this, you'll definitely enjoy this video from the BBQ man himself. But with that said, thank you guys so much for watching, and we hope you have a great day. Until next time.